Welcome to Experimarketing, the podcast where we innovate, create, and appreciate. Powered by Mostly Automotive Marketing with Matt Wilson. Here's the host of Experimarketing, Chief Experimarketer, Colin Carasquillo.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, Experimarketers of all ages. Colin Carasquillo here, the Chief Experimarketer in charge at Experimarketing. Let me bring on my co-host without any further ado, Mr. Matt Wilson.
Yes, sir. Hello, Colin.
Matt Wilson, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Hey,
but it's on co-host, so I don't have to say thanks for having me on.
I mean, yeah, it's like my place is your place. Mi casa is su casa. So Just come on in. Look, you've been playing some guitar back there for all the viewers, at least. I see a nice little guitar back there.
I will say that I know how to play about 4 chords. But changing between the chords sometimes can be an issue.
I hear you. You know, they say, I think, go ahead.
I was going to say I can do pretty well, except when a song has the F chord in it. That's an issue. I can't get my fingers in and it's very frustrating because my whole family is very accomplished guitar players, except for me.
See, I thought this time around when we did the introduction, that was actually you riffing. And
yeah, that was me.
I thought, wow, that was really impressive that you did that.
I like power chords.
All right, power chords. I like power chords too. Today's episode, we'll consider this episode today a power chord, because we have a power person on, a power player in the automotive space. We're going to talk about what's been plaguing dealers for a couple months now, actually longer than a couple months, is inventory. You hear about that issue? Yeah. You hear about the inventory issue?
I have. Let me see that. I'm trying to look at the lot behind you on video.
It's pretty empty.
I can't tell because of the
there's a glare, but it is pretty empty. That is actually, for everyone viewing, that's our pre-owned and certified pre-owned lot over there. And usually there are hundreds of cars. And right now I probably have 60 cars. So yeah, inventory is a problem. It's been a problem. It will most likely continue to be a problem. Until when, we really don't know, but have no fear, because our guest today is going to tell us what we can do without inventory, because no inventory, no problem. Experimarketing episode 27 with one of our favorite guests, or at least one of my favorite guests.
Yes. And
this person is also an accomplished podcaster herself. She hosts the Inside Auto podcast. She's also the director of marketing at a company called AutoLeadStar, which we personally utilize. It's Ilana Shabtay. Hey, how are you?
Hey, so good to be back with you guys.
It's good to have you back.
Yeah.
So,
nice to be here.
For all those that don't know, I mean, people should know you because, look, you're on the dealer marketing expert panel too. You're the director of marketing at AutoLeadStar. You have the Inside Auto podcast, which, I mean, I listen to, Matt listens to. We've been lucky enough to be on the podcast. Tell those out there, though, that have the unfortunate problem of not knowing you, who you are, and what's going on there, Ilana.
I'll do the short version because I feel like at this point everyone has heard my introduction. I'm Ilana Shabtay. I am extremely passionate about good user experience, which we talk a lot about on this podcast and in other places. I'm also very passionate for a good cocktail, which I might have some competition with you, Colin, because I've been seeing your Instagram stories, and right. I don't know, I might have some competition.
So, but yes, for those out there, the drunk pumpkin is what Ilana's talking about, and this is something I concocted the other day. Thank you. Out by the fire pit, where I find a lot of my inspiration. But if you guys want to check out the drunk pumpkin, just go on LinkedIn. I'll post the cocktail order over there. But yes,
there you go.
I'll have to send it to you somehow. All the ingredients, maybe like one of those little cocktail courier-esque boxes over there in Israel, and I'll send you the secret sauce.
Yeah.
All right. So you wrote this awesome article, no inventory, no problem, marketing tips from the field for your dealership success. Once again, this can be found on dealermarketing.com, Dealer Marketing Magazine. As I mentioned, you're an expert panelist. They're awesome enough to sponsor our episode so we can continue talking to experts like you to put the good word out into the ether, right? But help the automotive space. So, I mean, Matt and I touched on it before. This is not an issue that's isolated to here in New Jersey or an issue that's isolated to Connecticut where Matt sits and for the dealers that he represents. This is a worldwide, but right now it's a national issue here in the United States. It's this inventory shortage. So what's happening? What's going on? Do you have any side of, speculation from your side, a trusted vendor partner, when this will all end? Or is this something like, hey, we need to do what we can with what we have? Go ahead.
I certainly don't have any more speculation than you would on when it would end. I will say that I have been following the news, and it looks like there's good and bad news. Right. The good news is that it looks like we've stabilized, so hopefully it won't get worse. That's what I've been reading. Sure. Something I specifically read today was through KBB that mentioned that. The bad news is that stabilizing at a level like this isn't so great. So It is obvious that there's a challenge, and in no way am I saying that that challenge does not exist and we have to figure out a solution. And I don't know when the inventory will come back to normal levels. But I will say that in any crisis, and I think we learned this through COVID as well, in any crisis, whether that's inventory shortage or a global pandemic or whatever it might be in the future, ending all marketing spend or not fine-tuning your marketing to fit the current environment is going to eventually hurt your brand and hurt your dealership's numbers and bottom line and business. So that's what that article is focusing on, and that's what we'll talk about today. But I do think it's important to take a step outside and think about it on a macro and then also micro level, of course.
Yeah, and that's why I love this article. I mean, ultimately, what you guys are proposing here, what you're proposing, and what AutoLeadStar would be doing is, Experimarketing at its best. You are faced with an adversity, and instead of saying, hey, that's it, I'm packing up, I'm going home, I'm throwing in the white towel, you're finding other ways that dealers can still remain successful, if not even gain more market share during these times of lower inventory, where some dealers, as I just mentioned before, are kind of like, well, hey, guess what? I don't have any inventory. I'm not going to spend any money because I have nothing to sell. When in reality, that's probably not the best move. Now, that could be one of the plays, but is that the play that the dealer should make? No, I don't think so. So let me ask Matt. Matt, obviously being on the agency side of things, what are dealers saying to you? Is there frustration? Or are they saying, hey, I'm going to stop spending my money? Or are they saying, hey, you need to help me out and do what you can with what we have?
I'd say it's a mix of things, but I've been lucky enough to, we have a lot of dealers who we talk strategy with in terms of, you still have some cars, right? And the part of that is there's still demand. People still need cars. So people are still shopping for cars. And what are they going to do when they can finally find that car? You still have leads coming in. You're not letting go your BDCs. You're not letting go of, all of a sudden just ignoring all your traffic. So you need to communicate with those people and talk to those people. Not having a car doesn't mean you're not going to sell that person a car at some point. So we're advocating still advertising, obviously, but we're an agency. That's our job, right? But from the dealer standpoint, for dealers that already do some mid-funnel, high-funnel, like branding type stuff, there's no reason to stop doing that. That's a long-term play anyway. But some of the short-term stuff with paid search is, people, if it's not spending, if people aren't searching, and people still need cars. So we are advocating that you don't turn down anything, and you still need to answer those leads and cultivate those relationships. But that being said, from the dealer perspective, having been on the dealer side, is sometimes the financials just don't work out. Like you need to make money, and you can't just spend it all. So I also get from the dealer side listen, I need to save some money. I agree with your philosophy of continuing the spend, but I'm not making any money, so I got to save some money. So we'll work with our dealers as best we can to make smart choices and the best decisions on what to do or what not to do. But for me, I don't want to say it's not that bad, because it is bad, but our dealers have been kind of holding the line, I guess, is the way to say it.
So not making a push per se, but maintaining their existing spends and things like that, which, hey, that's exceptionally reasonable. You know, I think we would be in a similar position over here at the Nielsen Automotive Group. But some of the things that you had mentioned, Matt, and I think this is where the good conversation comes from, is dealers now, although we're not selling as many cars because we don't have the inventory, the turn rates are exceptionally high, right? So dealers are almost selling, if not 100% of their inventory before new inventory even gets there. And then all dealers know this, the gross profit per car is crazy still. And so you are making money. You're just selling less cars. And it's almost like finding that sweet spot between keeping your floor plan low, right? So you're not paying interest on all these vehicles that would normally just sit here for a crazy amount of time. The vehicles are coming in and they're moving and you're making gross profit. So in reality, you are making money. But then the whole thing becomes, well, if these cars are selling, is it because of the existing advertising that I'm already doing? Can I throttle back my advertising? So there is really no right or wrong way to go about this if you are still selling a car, Mr. or Mrs. Dealer. But I think what we want to get out of this is to show dealers that if you are in a moment where you're panicking or you're saying, I shouldn't be spending money, that you listen to this, because you might say, hey, that's exactly what I want to do. There still are opportunities, as you mentioned, Matt, mid or higher funnel branding campaigns or pre-ordering, which Ilana had written this great article about, which we'll get into. So yeah, Matt, I know you were jumping in before. What else do you have to say, my friend?
I'm just saying two things. I have one dealer who, anytime a truck arrives, all the cars on the truck are already sold, right? And somehow they sell 100 cars a month. And now they only have 15 cars and they're still selling 100 cars a month. I don't know how the math works out, but they're just doing it a different way. And then another dealer, I was having a conversation with a dealer who's like, Matt, he's like, I'm generating the same revenue it was before. I'm just generating it differently. I'm making front end gross. It's a Highline brand. I'm making front end gross on all my cars. I'm not hitting any manufacturer goals, not making money. He's like, and I'm actually dreading the time when I have to decide, do I go back to low funnel price driven advertising because my competition is going to start racing to the bottom, and like, when do I, because like you said, they're in that balance. I'm making money, but at some point it's going to go the other way. We're going to be making money a different way. And our advertising strategy may change a little bit as you're balancing between front end gross and incentives coming in from the OEM. But I think some dealers actually don't like it. But like, hey, we're making front end gross. It's kind of fun right now.
They're making money, right? It's a good time. You can be as transparent as possible with the customer. I mean, I don't know if the statistics changed, but it used to be that automotive dealers or car salespeople were second least trusted compared to politicians. That's not good for us the industry. But now here's a time where this is what it is, folks. If a customer comes in and you tell them, I'm sorry, I only have these set vehicles, we can try to get you into a pre-owned or certified pre-owned one, or you have this vehicle which you can custom order. We don't know essentially when it will be here, but this is what it is. And people are agreeing to that. That's why I think dealers are having a pretty good time, because then they're also making money. So they're just being as matter of fact as they can. But the whole idea is customers, the demand's out there. Customers will continue to shop, even given the inventory, right? But let's get down to it then, because Ilana, I know you're sitting there very patiently, so I appreciate that. But what we'll do is let's get down to it then, and ultimately let's just go right into these strategies that you had laid out here, because this really is the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to get into today. So tips and tricks to battle the inventory shortage. And your article was very nicely written, very easy to go through and digest. So it made it very nice for a show outline. But essentially, one of the things that you talk about, the first thing you talk about, a brand campaign. Now, that's not rocket science. That's kind of one of those things that I think dealers forget about, though, because they're so focused on doing inventory specific advertising, because it's been ingrained in their minds that that's the most efficient way to advertise, is drive that customer to that vehicle details page for that specific vehicle that you have. That way that customer will convert. It's going to save you money. It's going to be the most cost efficient way to get a customer. But let's talk about brand campaigns, because that's a little higher up the funnel. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so I think I don't necessarily agree with this statement all the time, but during this, and I think strategy is really important as a response to what's happening. So in this case, I agree with Matt. We would talk to their clients, you change strategy. I do think impression share is really important at a time like this, because consumers know that there's no inventory, right? I mean, I have I just spoke to my friend who has been waiting 3 months for her minivan because she's expecting her third kid. And she didn't care what dealer it was from. There's absolutely no brand loyalty at this point. Anyway, it was diminishing, but now even more so, people are going to go to whatever dealer has that available inventory. Mm-hmm. But I also think because of that, they might not necessarily be searching for specific inventory. Even if they are, they're also just trying to find dealer near me. Who can I get on the phone? Who has the best customer service? It's really important to get impression share at a time like this. You need to establish brand authority. You need to establish, you need to have some control over creating, of getting those leads and creating those conversations like Matt mentioned earlier. I think competition is one of the biggest downfalls to not doing brand campaigns right now, because someone is going to be able to conquest your lead within minutes in this kind of environment. No, so I do think it's really important.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, even prior to inventory shortages, I mean, one of the biggest things coming out of COVID was focusing on customer experience. And so here's something for a dealer where they can say, all right, as a result of COVID, we implemented these online retailing tools. We've implemented a better and more efficient way of doing business. We focused on our customer service because we really did need to get whatever kind of action was out there in the COVID infested world to our dealership so we could continue our operations, right? But now take that same philosophy and say, now that we have low inventory, all the good stuff that we did in terms of making those changes to make our operations more efficient, to provide a better customer experience, now we should be screaming that from the rooftops, and we should be showing our customers that, we have a great customer experience. So when a customer does see that you have that vehicle on the lot, or should they choose to come buy a pre-owned or certified pre-owned vehicle, that's why they choose your dealership, because of that great customer experience that you've now created. As you mentioned in here, reputation. Always very exceptional or very important to focus on the reputation of the dealership, sales, service, parts, all components of it. But I mean, basically, that's something that a dealer has spent years building, depending on the age of the dealership. It's now time to put a little money behind putting that out to the masses, correct?
100%. And like you mentioned, the brand campaign can be tweaked exactly to what's going on in current events. So you might want to mention that you do have inventory. You don't have to be specific. Whatever, dealership name, town, we have inventory in stock, or we work with you, or customer success, whatever it might be that you want to highlight. Whereas last year it was probably, sanitize everything, come in, best hygiene, whatever it might be. So the brand campaigns should also fit the current events and show that you're the dealer that's there for the customer. But I certainly think that the impression share is really important at a time like this. And I also think the mix between paid and organic, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is going to help dealers just show up first, because consumers also don't pay attention. So even if you do have that organic covered, and I do think that's important, again, we'll get to that, consumers are going to always click the first one. Not everyone necessarily even notices it's an ad. Right, so you want to make sure that a competitor doesn't get that space.
No, I think that's really valuable information. I also think, you do have it outlined here, but you've seen dealers about, we'll buy your car. Right now, customers are getting top dollar for their vehicles, even if they're not buying a vehicle from the dealership. So that's something that, once again, like you said, we'll touch on. But there's another idea. Make sure you have these kind of campaigns covered, or working the service drive, which we'll dig into. But there's just so many possibilities. And we don't want dealers. I mean, that's why we have this podcast and we have you guys on. We don't want these dealers to feel like they're backed into a corner because they don't have inventory. Start utilizing the other aspects of your organization that already exist that you can use as other profit centers. While one profit center may be down, it's most certainly not out. So we talk about brand campaigns. Let's talk about pre-ordering or advertising pre-order options. And before I have you explain that, I'll even tell you, Ford, for example, we have a Ford dealership that we represent, or we represent the Ford brand. We have a Ford dealership. One of the biggest things with Ford, especially since they don't have inventory on the ground at this point in time, is pre-order options. The F-150 Lightning, which is their electric F-150 coming out, the Maverick, Unfortunately, we had to stop orders or pre-orders for the Ford Bronco just due to some manufacturing errors that they were having. But ultimately, that was a big push that Ford made, which was advertise the fact that you can reserve or pre-order a vehicle. So talk to us about that, pre-order options.
I mean, I think it's exactly that, right? I think it's important to show that as an option because, again, consumers know what's going on, and they're going to be searching for things like pre-order X vehicle because they're going to know that they're not going to be able to find it, and you'll see that the searches are pretty high volume for things like that. And dealers can even do it. They can set up the dynamic campaigns so that it literally just has. And this is a pretty practical tip, but you can literally just do pre-order and then model, type, year, whatever.
Right.
Let that run, and then you're covered for basically any search in your area and within your targeting parameters. So I think that's really important. Then, of course, the other side is if you do have a pre-order landing page or certain pages on your website, certainly creating those retargeting campaigns with pre-order options is going to skyrocket the interest from shoppers today and keep leads high for dealers. And I think it's really important to show that because not everyone's doing that, so you'll have the competitive edge.
Yeah, no, and I think ultimately you bring up a very good point. So for the dealers, advertisers listening out there, this is not just a one solution and be done with it. And what I mean by that is it's not just have a search campaign for pre-order options. As Ilana had mentioned, that's just one component to making this whole process work. So search. People are saying, all right, I'm looking for, or I want to reserve this vehicle. Once they get to your dealership website, you then need to ensure that, yes, there is a relevant landing page that they're dropped off on. And whether your goal is to have a live conversation with this person, so now you're chatting with them, or they fill out a form there, they say this is the type of vehicle that they're interested in. And then ultimately you are retargeting them with messaging about the pre-order process and whether it's, they've already submitted the fact that they're interested in pre-ordering a vehicle. Well, now you should be following up with actually that brand campaign or these other components that now compound on each other. And that's how you make this as successful as possible. It's not just a one and done solution, right? It's not just doing search. It's not just doing social. It's not just doing retargeting. It's doing all of them and making sure you're allocating enough ad dollars towards making that ecosystem so it works. Would you agree? Is that exactly what you're saying?
Exactly what I'm saying. And even, I've also spoken to some dealers that, if the follow-up, if the experience is really, it flows really well and the follow-up is really great from the dealer, sometimes they can even get that shopper into a different vehicle faster. They might not actually be interested in that exact vehicle. If you have something similar, you can try and, of course, based on the conversation with the shopper, try and see if you can get them into a vehicle faster. In that case, you're certainly taking business away from someone who would have had that campaign running and taken that lead from you. So it's definitely important, and it is important that every single step of the way is connected and that the user experience is really tight.
Works together, and that makes a really good point. Ultimately, and yeah, now I'm just realizing it too. It's like the epiphany, but the fact of the matter is if you capture someone on that reserve page or pre-order page, and then like you said, if you have a great customer experience that you're providing, or you're having that one-on-one conversation with the customer and you're saying, how urgent is your need for purchase, right? Or is this something like your vehicle blew up, you need a vehicle now? Do you have time before you end up purchasing this vehicle? Well, here are some other pre-owned options, or another vehicle that we might have. Yeah, then like you said, you're taking that person off the market and you're putting their butt into a seat on your lot, and then ultimately hopefully they can drive off. That's a very, very good point.
At a high gross as well. So you're
at a high gross. It's a win-win for everyone at that point, which is really awesome. So we're talking about the paid side of it, right? And ultimately SEO, everyone, I love SEO. Search engine optimization, right? So essentially you have your paid ads, which we talked about, your search engine marketing. SEO, although yes, you pay for SEO in theory, you can have your web providers and individuals build out different landing pages or content that ties in with what we're talking about here, your brand campaigns, your pre-order options, etc. So you talk about fine-tuning your SEO. What are ways that dealers should focus on fine-tuning their SEO for these times of low inventory?
I would definitely, a trick that I even use for AutoLeadStar is I just go into Keyword Planner. It's a free tool, and I look up certain searches and it tells you if the search volume is high. So it does two things for you. And on one hand, it just tells you what people are looking for. So it helps you understand which terms you should be weaving into your VDPs, into your SRPs, into your blog posts, if that's something you do, landing pages, and that helps you rank high. But also Google in general favors when you have the words that people search intertwined on your page, it's gonna automatically favor your page, and that's how you kind of get hired. So I would certainly look at Keyword Planner, and I would put in things like pre-order, dealer near me, inventory. I don't know exactly what would be high search. You have to play around with it for, I don't know, maybe even 15, 20 minutes. It'll shoot you out some high search volume, and then you can put that into your VDPs and into your landing pages, and that just helps with SEO. It's a cheap and affordable option during this time. I think that's why it's important to focus on it from a marketing perspective. But again, the paid and organic combination is what's best. But I think because there's no inventory, dealers are in the mindset of stopping all marketing, including things like SEO, which I think is just as important, especially during a time like this when people are searching nonstop. You want to be the solution. You want to be the dealer that they choose.
Ultimately, I would consider this, to when we were in the peak of COVID, right? Where essentially, I think a lot of dealers did turn off their advertising. But one of the things that I know that we did, we stopped our search campaigns. I will actually say that we did stop our search campaigns. But I said at that point, we need to focus on our SEO, and more so now than ever, because if we could still rank while other dealers have turned their search campaigns off and just forget about everything, and we still show up organically in that first or second spot, well, we will win 9 times out of 10 in terms of getting those people to our websites. And of course, one of the things that we talk about with SEO is Google My Business. And ultimately, with Google My Business, here's just another outlet that to you, Mr. or Mrs. Dealer, is completely free, where on your Google My Business now, you can advertise through, posts or the products or things like that, even that you have, pre-order options available. You can sell us your vehicle, even if you don't buy a car from us. You can value your trade and you'll get top dollar for your trade. So there's just different ways to get more exposure. And the biggest thing that you had mentioned, which is key, is that it's cost efficient and basically won't cost you any additional money than what I'm sure you're already spending. Because guess what? If you have a website provider like a dealer.com or a CDK or a Dealer Inspire or whoever you work with, most likely you're already getting these services by paying for your website and your package. Ask your web provider what services you are currently getting. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say you have some basic SEO service, or maybe you're even paying for a premium service. Well, now is the time to leverage what you're already paying for and utilize it towards the outlines in your article here, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, that's easy enough. So let's go into then working the service drive, because here's something, Matt and I just talked about it before. Dealers need to pivot. Right? It's like that Friends. You guys Friends fans? Like you pivot.
Every single night.
Pivot.
Who's not?
So now you need to pivot. And ultimately, I think a lot of dealers, there are some dealers out there that obviously do a very good job focusing on fixed ops, right? I will say that's an opportunity for improvement here at the Nielsen Automotive Group. We are very sales heavy, right? And then we think, okay, from the sales side, that goes over to our fixed ops. And then we continue feeding what I call the infinity loop from sales to service to parts, whatever. But the fact of the matter is you can still have a lot of success just working on the service drive or service side of things to get people back to the sales side of things. So talk about working the service drive.
So I think when we think about it in the context of marketing, definitely being able to market and advertise service and parts in different types of campaigns is important, especially as people are extending their leases because inventory is not available. People are going to have to come in for more service. And definitely Google My Business. Google My Business can even be set up. You can have 2 sub profiles for your dealership and for your service center. So I would highly recommend that and make sure hours are accurate. Obviously, signing up for a service appointment should be seamless. Dealers are spending more time on fixed ops. I think in the last couple of years, I have been seeing that, but it definitely should be an area of focus if there's there's no inventory, or if you don't have as many campaigns running because you don't have as many cars on your lot. So that's what I was referring to with working the service drive. But there's even more to it. I mean, I recently on the Inside Auto podcast spoke to someone from Fixed Ops Marketing who was saying that even on dealers' websites, like they still have sometimes print this coupon for service. No one's going to print a coupon. No one's going to come in and print a coupon. So make it seamless, like, text me the coupon code or email me, different options that are realistic for 2021. Things like that. So not even thinking about SEM, even just the user experience on the website, and just making it really easy for people to choose, again, your dealership over the dealership next door, because they can text a coupon versus printing. So that's what I think is the takeaway on working the service drive.
And I mean, let's just segue right into your next portion here, but trade in, trade up. So
yeah, exactly.
This becomes tricky, obviously, because you can trade in, but you might not have a car that the person can trade up to. But let's say, for example, and I think there is a statistic out there, I'd have to find it, so I'm not going to spit out any actual data, but I believe I read that the we buy, sell messaging, right? Or excuse me, we will buy your car even if you don't buy one from us. The majority of people that are actually coming in and selling their cars at this point in time, it's a second or third vehicle. So it's really not their primary driving vehicle or their primary vehicle. So if it's a second or third vehicle, who knows? Maybe take a shot, put a process in place in your service driver. If that person's getting that vehicle serviced, it might not be their primary driver. Maybe it's their secondary or even tertiary vehicle, where you can say, hey, we'll just buy your car from you. And ultimately now it gives you another piece of inventory that you can sell or send to auction, right? I mean, listen, as dealers, we can't pretend that auction doesn't exist. Wholesale has been great as well for the past couple of months. So it might give you another unit to put out on your lot. And all it takes is putting a process in place, whether it's a service advisor or someone from your sales team in the service drive saying, hey, we'll do an appraisal on your vehicle. We'll give you, a check, right, for the value of the vehicle right here and now. We can call you an Uber so you can get home or whatever it may be, or someone can come pick you up. And now you have another unit that you can have made frontline ready and potentially sell. So many different ways to go about doing this. And that's the beauty of the industry. That's the beauty of having brains like you, Ilana, to be able to share this with the dealer community. I think it's really fascinating. Just because dealers are doing this now, right? Or because inventory is a problem now. Matt said it's that balancing act between, what are dealers going to do in the future? What do you think dealers are going to do, or at least what should dealers do? If you were at a dealership, if you owned a dealership, would you take this and continue doing this in the future? What would your words of wisdom be?
I definitely would tweak strategy, but I do think there are a couple of things that are really important to have as a basis for your marketing strategy. So that's for sure a healthy mix between paid and organic, which this is becoming the theme of this podcast. I also think making sure that your ads are, even your brand campaigns and your name campaigns, making sure that they're aligned with current events. I think shoppers respond really well to that, and it shows that you're up to date. But something else that you mentioned that I think is really important is, of course, wholesale isn't always going to be in the same position that it is now. And I think focusing on always trying to get the trade in and always trying to get the customer to get you that deal or have that transaction in front of the customer should be relevant for right now and in the future. Because when you go to wholesale, you lose the opportunity for a customer for life, which I think is a really important point. So whether or not wholesale is going to be, beneficial for a dealership, I would say if you can, always try to do the transaction with a customer and get that customer for life.
I love it. Ultimately, you want that customer for life, and here are some ways to do it, even when inventory might be a problem. Ilana, thank you so very much for your time today. You're a wealth of information. I'm just going to shamelessly plug your podcast. So Inside Auto Podcast, as I mentioned, Matt and I have been on it before. It's a great podcast. Always love having a conversation with you. I think you're one of the best minds in the automotive space. So thank you for blessing us with your presence. You can check out Ilana's articles at Dealer Marketing Magazine, dealermarketing.com. She's one of the expert panelists on there. A really, really great conversation today. And ultimately, that even has your contact information, dealermarketing.com. So get in touch with all of us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the inventory shortage. Obviously, not a problem. It's an opportunity for us just to kick butt with some of the strategies that Ilana gave us today. So thank you so very much for being on once again, and we will talk to you next time, all right?
Yes, thank you both.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Matt.
Yes, sir.
Now you're going to run to your clients and say, hey, I got some ideas. No inventory, no problem.
I wrote everything down right here on my little
there you go, your little pad.
I got it. Thanks, Ilana.
So, yeah, no, I think ultimately just really, really great ideas here outlined on the article. One of the things I do just want to reiterate, which is what Ilana said at the end there, but having that healthy mix between paid and organic, right? So paid search or paid outlets, then organic outlets, your SEO, having that brand campaign built into both of those components. Then obviously advertising the pre-order options is going to require you to build out a campaign on your social channels and have a relevant landing page on your websites for individuals, but also then put that on your Google My Business. Anywhere that you can market that to a consumer, make sure that it's out there, because a pre-order is still a sale. I will tell you, a lot of the sold units, because they're not here, a lot of the sold units that we have at the dealership are pre-orders. People saying, I want this vehicle. This is how they configure it. Boom. It's a vehicle that's bought, it's sold, but the fact of the matter is it's not physically here. When it gets here, though, we're going to do our darndest to make sure that that customer has a great customer experience to give that vehicle delivery. Ultimately, fine-tune your SEO and work the service drive and trade and trade up. Matt's playing me out of my own show. I'm not rushing
you. You got this is a very long.
This is a very playing me out of my own show.
This is a very long, very long music bed. Take your time.
Subscribe on YouTube. Connect on LinkedIn. I'm getting booed and bumped from my own show.
It's like it's like the Emmys. It's like the Emmy Awards. You just keep talking. I just do this, right?
That guy that came out? It's old school. The Sandman. Kane. Okay, now you can play us out. See you guys later. We'll see you next time.
I got things to do, man. I gotta go.
Yeah. See ya. All right.